My name is Jordan Hayes. I just turned 19, and I thought becoming an adult meant understanding how the world works, how families function, how people live their lives. Instead, it meant discovering that my father had been living two completely different lives for my entire existence, and that while my mother and I struggled in poverty, so severe we sometimes skipped meals, his other family lived in luxury I could not even imagine. This is the story of how a random Facebook search destroyed two families in one night, and how learning the truth about my father's double life taught me that some lies are so big they burn down everything when they finally come to light. It was a Thursday evening in November, the week before Thanksgiving. The date was November 18th. I remember the date because it is the kind of date you remember forever, the kind that divides your life into before and after. Before I knew, after I knew, everything that came before November 18th was based on lies. Everything that came after was based on truth, however painful that truth might be. I was in my apartment near community college, the tiny studio I could barely afford even while working two jobs and taking out student loans I would be paying off until I was 40. The place was barely 400 square feet, a single room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen all at once, with a bathroom so small I could barely turn around in the shower. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors arguing about money every night, could hear the couple upstairs having sex, could hear the guy next door playing video games at 3 in the morning. The heat was inconsistent at best, and there was a persistent leak in the ceiling that the landlord refused to fix despite multiple complaints. I kept a bucket in the corner that filled up when it rained, and I had to empty it twice a day or it would overflow onto the already water-damaged floor. But it was mine. I was paying for it myself with money I earned from working 40 hours a week at a fast food restaurant called Quick Burger and another 20 hours doing overnight stocking at a grocery store called Savamart. The rent was $650 a month, which does not sound like much until you realize that minimum wage in our state was $9 an hour, which meant that after taxes, I was bringing home maybe $1,400 a month from both jobs combined. After rent, I had $750 for everything else: food, utilities, gas for my beat-up Honda that was constantly breaking down, books for school, phone bill, internet, because I needed it for online classes, and anything else that came up, which meant I was eating ramen and peanut butter sandwiches most days, wearing clothes until they literally fell apart, and living one car repair away from complete financial collapse. I was exhausted that Thursday evening. More than exhausted, I was running on empty, operating in survival mode, barely functioning. I had just finished what we call in the service industry a clopen, closing the restaurant at 11 p.m. the night before, then opening it at 5 a.m. that morning, which meant I had gotten maybe 3 hours of sleep, worked the breakfast and lunch rush at Quick Burger, dealing with rude customers and a broken grill and a manager who thought yelling was an effective management technique, then driven straight to Savamart for my overnight stocking shift, where I spent 8 hours lifting heavy boxes and stocking shelves and trying not to fall asleep on my feet. I had gotten home at 7 in the morning, slept until noon, dragged myself to my 2 afternoon classes at community college, where I struggled to stay awake and absorb any information, and now I was back in my apartment staring at my laptop, trying to write an essay on economic inequality that was due the next day. The irony was not lost on me. Writing about income disparity while living it, analyzing poverty from the inside, discussing theoretical solutions to problems I was experiencing in real time. But I was too tired to write, too tired to think, too tired to do anything except stare at the blank document on my laptop screen and wonder how other students managed to get their work done when they were not working 60-hour weeks just to survive. So I was procrastinating, scrolling through Facebook on my phone, looking at other people's lives, seeing their happy photos and vacation pictures and posts about their hopes and dreams, wondering what it must be like to have enough energy left over after basic survival to actually enjoy life. That was when the algorithm decided to destroy my world. Facebook's People You May Know feature popped up a suggestion. The profile picture showed a man who looked exactly like my father, but the name was different. Robert Hayes instead of Robert Johnson, which was my father's last name. Or what I thought was his last name. Or what he had told us was his last name for my entire life. I stared at the profile picture for a long moment, my tired brain trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was definitely him. I would know that face anywhere. Same face I had seen sporadically throughout my childhood, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Same distinctive scar above his left eyebrow from a car accident when he was 20 that he had told me about once during one of his rare moments of actually talking to me. Same slightly crooked nose from a break that had never healed quite right. Same way of holding his shoulders, slightly hunched forward like he was carrying a heavy weight. Same hairline, same eyes, same slight asymmetry in his smile. It was my father, but the name was wrong, and something about seeing him there on Facebook, using a different name, made my stomach drop and my heart start racing. I sat up straighter, suddenly not tired anymore. Adrenaline will do that, snap you into alertness when your brain recognizes that something is very, very wrong. I clicked on the profile, half expecting it to be private, locked down, inaccessible. But it was not. It was completely public, which was my first stroke of luck. Or maybe unluck, depending on how you looked at it. Most people keep their Facebook profiles at least somewhat private, visible only to friends or friends of friends. But Robert Hayes apparently was not concerned about privacy. Or maybe he thought he was safe. Maybe he thought no one from his other life would ever stumble across this profile. Maybe after years of successfully maintaining his double life, he had gotten careless, confident, too comfortable with his deception. I started scrolling through the photos, and each one hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Each one revealed another piece of a life I had no idea existed. Each one showed me a version of my father I had never seen before, happy, present, engaged, smiling genuinely instead of the tired, distant expression he wore the few times I saw him. Each photo was evidence of a massive lie, a parallel existence, a betrayal so profound I could not even begin to process it. The first photo that really stopped me was recent, posted just 2 days ago on November 16th. It showed my father at what was clearly an expensive Thanksgiving dinner. Not Thanksgiving yet, obviously, since that was still a week away, but some kind of early celebration or practice dinner, or whatever wealthy people do when they have the time and money for multiple holiday meals. He was sitting at the head of a massive dining room table in a room I had never seen, with vaulted ceilings and a crystal chandelier and windows that looked out onto what appeared to be a large, professionally landscaped backyard. The table was set with china that probably cost more than my monthly rent, with crystal glasses and silver candlesticks and cloth napkins, and an absurd amount of food, turkey and ham and multiple side dishes and pies, and everything you could possibly want. But it was not the fancy dinner that made me unable to breathe. It was the people sitting around the table with him. A woman I had never seen before, sitting beside him in the spot where a wife would sit, smiling at the camera with the easy confidence of someone who had never worried about money in her entire life. She was pretty, well-dressed in what looked like an expensive sweater, wearing jewelry that caught the light. And around the table were 3 kids, teenagers and a young teen, all dressed nicely, all smiling, all looking comfortable and happy and like they absolutely belonged there. The caption made it worse. Grateful for my beautiful family. 20 years of love and blessings. Cannot wait for the actual Thanksgiving next week. 20 years. I was 19 years old, which meant this other family, this other life, this other version of my father had existed since before I was born. which meant when my father met my mother, when he told her he loved her, when he got her pregnant with me, he already had another family, another wife, another life, and he had just added us on, like we were a side project, an afterthought, a second family he maintained while keeping his first family in the dark. I scrolled up to the top of his profile to see more. The profile picture was him and the unknown woman, heads together, both smiling. The cover photo was a family portrait, professional quality, the kind you get taken at a studio with good lighting and a photographer who knows what they are doing. All 5 of them dressed in coordinating outfits, looking like the perfect American family. The bio listed him as married to Jennifer Hayes, with a little heart emoji. His listed employer was Hayes Financial Consulting, with a location in the business district of our city. His education listed a degree from a university I knew cost over $50,000 a year in tuition alone. Every detail was wrong. Everything contradicted what I knew about my father. He was not a financial consultant. He was a truck driver, or so he had told us. He did not have a degree from an expensive university. He had barely finished high school, or so he had said. He was not married to Jennifer Hayes. He was married to my mother, Rebecca Johnson, or so I thought, though now I was starting to wonder if that was even true. I kept scrolling through photos, going back in time, watching his other life unfold in reverse. There was my father at a beach resort in Hawaii, his arm around Jennifer, both of them in swimsuits and sunglasses, tropical drinks in hand, standing in front of a luxury hotel with an infinity pool visible in the background. The photo was dated from 3 years ago, which meant he had taken this vacation around the time my mother and I were getting evicted from our apartment because we could not make rent. While we were packing our few belongings into garbage bags and trying to find a place that would rent to us despite having an eviction on record, my father was drinking Mai Tais on a beach in Hawaii with his other wife. There was my father at what looked like a high school graduation ceremony, beaming next to a teenage girl in a cap and gown, his arm around her shoulders, looking at her with unmistakable pride and love. The caption said, "So proud of my daughter Sophia on her graduation day, off to Yale in the fall." The photo had hundreds of likes, dozens of comments congratulating them both. Yale, an Ivy League school that costs over $70,000 a year, the kind of school I had not even bothered applying to because I knew there was no way we could afford it, even with loans and scholarships, and me working full-time. But apparently my father could afford it just fine for his other daughter, the one who got to be openly acknowledged and proudly celebrated. I had never seen my father look at me like that, not once in my entire life. When I graduated high school, not even a fancy private school, just the public school in our poor neighborhood, he had not even been there. I remembered that day clearly. I was one of the few kids whose parents did not show up. I sat alone in the auditorium afterward while other families took photos and celebrated, trying not to cry, trying to pretend I did not care. My mother had been there, of course, but she had to leave immediately after the ceremony to get to her evening shift at the restaurant. She could not afford to take the evening off for something like her son's graduation. And my father? I called him that morning to remind him what time the ceremony was, and he said he had to work, said there was a long-haul job he could not get out of, said he was sorry, but sometimes work has to come first. He promised he would make it up to me. He never did, but he had made it to Sophia's graduation, had dressed up nicely for it, had taken time off work, had looked at her with love and pride, had posted about it on Facebook for all the world to see. She mattered enough to show up for. I did not. I kept scrolling, each photo making me feel sicker. There was my father in front of a massive house, holding keys and grinning like he had just won the lottery. The house was beautiful, easily 5,000 square feet, 2 stories, brick facade, perfectly manicured lawn, 3-car garage. the kind of house you see in magazines about successful people living their best lives. The caption read, "New house, new beginnings. So blessed and grateful for this amazing opportunity." The photo was dated from 5 years ago, which I remember was the same year my mother and I got evicted and had to move into an even worse apartment than before because it was all we could afford. While we were living in a place with broken heat and water damage and cockroaches, my father bought a mansion. While my mother was working 3 jobs and still could not pay all our bills, my father was being blessed and grateful for his amazing opportunity. While I was wearing second-hand clothes and shoes with holes in them, his other family was living in luxury. There was my father at a fancy restaurant with his other family, all 5 of them dressed nicely, sitting at a table loaded with expensive food, steaks and seafood and wine and desserts. Everyone looked happy. Everyone looked comfortable. Everyone looked like they belonged together, like they were a real family, like this was normal and natural, and exactly how life was supposed to be. The caption said, "Family dinner night. Love these people so much," with a bunch of heart emojis. I tried to remember the last time my father had taken me and my mother out to dinner. I could not. We had never gone to restaurants together. We could not afford to eat out. On the rare occasions my father was home, we ate whatever cheap meals my mother could cobble together from discount groceries. Pasta with canned sauce, rice and beans, sandwiches. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, nothing memorable, just fuel to survive another day. But his other family got family dinner nights at fancy restaurants. They got steaks and seafood. They got to dress up and smile for photos and create memories together. They got a father who wanted to spend time with them, who enjoyed their company, who chose to be there. I went back further in the timeline, watching his other life unfold. Birthday parties for the kids, elaborate celebrations with themes and decorations, and what looked like professional entertainment. Christmas mornings with mountains of presents under a massive tree in their huge house. Summer vacations to places I had only seen in movies, Disneyland, the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, beaches and mountains, and cities across the country. School events where my father showed up and smiled and took photos. Sports games where he sat in the stands and cheered. Dance recitals. Music concerts. Science fairs. All the normal things parents do with their children. All the things I had never had with him because he was supposedly too busy working to provide for us. But he was not too busy for them. He made time for them. He showed up for them. He invested in them financially, emotionally, physically. They got the father I had always wanted. They got the life I had always dreamed of. They got everything while I got nothing. And they probably did not even realize how lucky they were, because this was just normal for them. This was just how their family operated. They had no idea that their father had another family living less than an hour away in poverty, struggling to survive while they took beach vacations and drove new cars and attended private schools. I found wedding photos. My father and Jennifer Hayes, dated 21 years ago. A big wedding with lots of guests, and a fancy venue, and Jennifer in an elaborate white dress, and my father in a tuxedo, looking happier than I had ever seen him look. The photos were professional quality, the kind you pay a photographer thousands of dollars to take. There were albums upon albums of wedding photos, getting ready, the ceremony, the reception, the first dance, cutting the cake, all the traditional moments carefully documented and preserved. 21 years ago, I was 19 years old, which meant my father married Jennifer 2 years before I was born, which meant when he met my mother, when he started a relationship with her, when he got her pregnant, he was already married, already had a wife, already had a life and a home and a commitment to someone else, and he just decided to start a second family anyway, not leave his first family, not get divorced and start over, just add another family while keeping the first one secret from the second and the second one secret from the first. My mother, I had to know what my mother knew. Had she known he was married? Had she been a willing participant in an affair? Or had he lied to her too? The sick feeling in my stomach told me she had not known. My mother was a lot of things, but she was not someone who would knowingly be the other woman. She had morals. She had values. She believed in commitment and honesty and doing the right thing, which meant my father had lied to her. He had lied to everyone. He had constructed this elaborate deception and maintained it for nearly 2 decades, somehow keeping 2 families separate, 2 lives parallel, 2 complete versions of himself that never intersected until this moment, until I accidentally found his Facebook profile, and his entire house of cards started to collapse. I kept scrolling. I had to see everything, had to understand the full scope of what he had done. There were photos from when Jennifer was pregnant with their first child. Sophia, I assumed, since she was the oldest based on the graduation photo. My father looking excited, protective, engaged, his hand on Jennifer's pregnant belly, smiling at the camera with joy and anticipation. The caption on one photo said, "Cannot wait to meet our little girl." Had he looked at my mother like that when she was pregnant with me? Had he touched her belly and smiled with anticipation? Had he been excited to meet me? I did not know. My mother had photos from when she was pregnant, a few of them tucked away in a box in her closet, but my father was not in any of them. She was always alone in the photos, or with her sister, or with co-workers from one of her jobs. Never with my father. I had always assumed it was because he was working, because he was on the road, because he was busy providing for us. Now I knew the truth. He was not in those photos, because he was with his other family, with Jennifer and baby Sophia, living his real life, while my mother was just, what? A side project? A mistake? An obligation he fulfilled grudgingly, with minimal effort and money? There were photos of baby Sophia, then toddler Sophia, then elementary school Sophia, and mixed in, photos of Jennifer pregnant again, then baby Ethan. My father looked happy in all of them, engaged, present, like an actual father instead of the distant, barely their figure he was for me. Ethan grew up in these photos year by year, and then Jennifer was pregnant a 3rd time, and then there was baby Olivia. 3 kids. He had 3 kids with Jennifer. Sophia, Ethan, Olivia. And he had me with my mother. For kids total, split between 2 families, with one family getting everything and the other getting scraps. And the family that got everything had no idea the family that got scraps even existed. I looked at the friends list on his profile. Over 500 friends. I did not recognize any of them. Not one. They were his coworkers and neighbors and other parents from his kids' schools and people from what appeared to be a country club membership. A completely separate social circle from anything in my mother's life or mine. 2 separate worlds that never touched. There were photo albums organized by year and event. Hawaii, 2019. Sophia's Sweet 16. Ethan's lacrosse championship. Family ski trip, 2020. Olivia's first horse show. Our 15th anniversary. On and on. Years and years of documented happiness and success and comfortable family life. Thousands of photos showing a life I had no access to, showing a father I had never known, showing a family that was whole and happy and had everything they could ever want. And nowhere in any of these thousands of photos was there any evidence that I existed. Not one photo of me, not one mention, not one acknowledgement that my father had another son living in poverty less than an hour away. I had been completely erased from his other life, edited out, made invisible. I did not exist in his real life. I only existed in his other life, his lesser life, his obligation life. I thought about my own Facebook profile. I had maybe 75 friends, most of them people from high school I barely talked to anymore. My profile picture was 3 years old because I did not have time or energy to take new photos. My posts were infrequent and mostly about work, complaining about difficult shifts, joking about rude customers, counting down until my next day off. There were no vacation photos because I had never been on vacation, no family dinner photos because we did not go to restaurants, no photos of me with my father because he was never around long enough to take photos. My entire Facebook presence was evidence of exactly the kind of life I was living, small, limited, defined by work and survival, with very little room for anything else. His other kids' profiles told completely different stories. Sophia Hayes, I found her profile easily, since they were friends on Facebook, had albums full of college visits and acceptances and celebration dinners. Her bio said, Yale class of 2027, and listed her interests as horseback riding, debate team, photography, traveling. Her photos showed someone who had never worried about money, never worked a minimum wage job, never had to choose between buying groceries and paying rent. She had over 800 friends. She posted about concerts and parties and trips and all the normal things privileged college students do. Ethan Hayes, age 16, had a profile full of lacrosse photos and college campus tours, even though he was only a sophomore in high school. His bio listed him as attending Westwood Preparatory Academy, a private school I had looked up once out of curiosity that cost $40,000 a year in tuition alone. His photos showed expensive equipment, travel to tournaments in other states, posts about visits to Duke and Stanford and other elite universities. He had over 600 friends. His life looked like a college recruiting video, full of achievement and opportunity and doors opening left and right. Olivia Hayes was only 13, so her profile was more restricted, but what I could see showed a girl who had never known hardship. Photos of her in elaborate costumes at dance recitals that probably cost hundreds of dollars. Photos of her at equestrian competitions on a gorgeous horse that I later found out, from reading the comments, was her own horse that they boarded at a stable. Her own horse. Most kids her age were begging for a pet hamster. Olivia Hayes had her own horse. I went back to Jennifer's profile, looking for more information. Her bio said she graduated from the same expensive university my father had listed. Her listed employment was blank. She was a stay-at-home mom, which apparently you could afford to be when your husband was making enough money to support a lavish lifestyle. Her profile was full of posts about book clubs and yoga classes and charity fundraising events and volunteering at her kids' schools. She posted about wine tastings and weekend getaways and renovating their kitchen and all the things women do when they have time and money and are not working 60-hour weeks just to survive. There were posts about her kids' achievements. Sophia winning a debate competition. Ethan scoring the winning goal at a lacrosse game. Olivia getting first place at a horse show. Proud mom posts, the kind my mother never had time to write because she was too busy working to keep us fed and housed. And mixed throughout all of these posts were comments from my father. Supportive, engaged, loving comments. So proud of you. That's my girl. Love this family so much. He commented regularly on their posts. He liked their photos. He engaged with their lives in a public, visible way. He was an active, involved father for them, present even when he was not physically there. I had his phone number saved in my phone. I pulled up our text history and scrolled back through months of messages. The most recent was from 2 weeks ago, a brief text saying, "Sending money tomorrow. Work has been busy." Before that, a text from 3 weeks before saying on the road, "Will try to call when I can." Before that, 6 weeks with no contact at all. I scrolled back through the entire year. Maybe 20 texts total, most of them brief, functional, about money or apologizing for being absent. No, I love you. No, I miss you. No, I am proud of you. Just logistics and excuses. I looked at his call history. We had not had an actual phone conversation in 4 months. For months. The last call was in July when I had called him in a panic because my car broke down and I needed help paying for repairs. He said he would see what he could do. He sent me $200 3 days later. The repairs cost $800, and I had to put the rest on a credit card I was still paying off for months since we had actually talked. But on Facebook, he was commenting multiple times a day on his other family's posts. He was present in their lives every single day. They were his priority. They were his family. We were just, what? An obligation? A burden? A secret he had to maintain? I went back to his profile and started looking at older posts. Posts from when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. Reading them was surreal, because I could match them to my own memories of those years. When I was 11, there was a post about taking the family on a road trip to Yosemite National Park. When I was 11, my mother and I were evicted from our apartment and had to live in our car for 3 weeks. When I was 12, there was a post about Sophia's birthday party, a huge celebration with what looked like 50 kids and elaborate decorations and a professional entertainer. When I was 12, my birthday was a single cupcake my mother bought from the grocery store because it was all she could afford. When I was 13, there were posts about their family vacation to Disneyland. When I was 13, I got my first job washing dishes under the table because we needed the money so badly. Year after year, their celebrated moments lined up with my worst moments. When they were happy, we were suffering. When they were buying new cars, we were taking the bus because ours broke down and we could not afford to fix it. When they were going to concerts and sporting events, I was working double shifts so my mother could maybe take 1 day off a month. Their highs were built on our lows. Their comfort was purchased with our suffering. Every dollar that went to them was a dollar that did not come to us. Every moment of attention he gave them was stolen from the time he could have spent with me. And the thing that made me want to scream was realizing that it did not have to be this way. It was not like my father was poor and struggling to provide for 2 families. He was wealthy. Based on the lifestyle shown in these photos, he was making well over $200,000 a year, maybe more. That house, those cars, those vacations, those private school tuitions, all of that required serious money. Money he clearly had. Money he was actively choosing to spend on one family, while telling the other family that there was no money, that we were poor, that we had to make do with nothing. He could have supported both families comfortably. He could have given my mother enough money that she only needed 1 job instead of 3. He could have bought me clothes that fit and shoes without holes. He could have paid for me to play sports or take music lessons or do literally anything other than work multiple jobs to survive. He had the means. He just did not have the will. He made a choice every single day for 19 years to prioritize them over us, to give them everything and give us nothing, to be a real father to them and barely a presence to me. And I realized, sitting there in my tiny apartment at 1 a.m, exhausted and shocked and struggling to process the magnitude of this betrayal, I realized that this was not just about money. Yes, the financial aspect was devastating. Yes, growing up in poverty while he lived in luxury was unforgivable. But the real wound, the one that cut deepest, was the rejection. The choice he made over and over, to be a father to them but not to me, to show up for them but not for me, to love them but not me, to include them in his real life while keeping me hidden like a shameful secret. I was not worth being a father to. That was the message. I was not worth his time or attention or love. I was not worth showing up for or being present with or acknowledging publicly. I was something to be minimized, something to be managed with minimal effort and money, something separate from his real life with his real family. And his other kids, Sophia, Ethan, Olivia, they had no idea. They thought they knew their father. They thought they understood their family. They had no idea that their comfortable life was built on someone else's suffering, that their father's absences were not because he was working hard to provide for them, but because he was maintaining another family somewhere else, that they had a half-brother living in poverty less than an hour away, working himself to exhaustion, believing he could not have the things they took for granted because there was not enough money when really there was plenty of money, just not for him. They deserved to know. My mother deserved to know. Everyone deserved to know the truth about what my father really was. Not the successful financial consultant and devoted family man he pretended to be online, but the liar, the manipulator, the man who had maintained an elaborate deception for 2 decades, hurting everyone involved, prioritizing his own comfort and convenience over the well-being of his own child. I started taking screenshots. Every photo that showed his other life. Every post that contradicted what he had told us. Every comment that proved how engaged he was with them while being absent from us. Every piece of evidence that documented his double life. I took hundreds of screenshots, filling up my phone's storage, building a comprehensive record of his lies. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. My heart was racing. I felt dizzy, nauseous, like I might pass out or throw up, or both. But I kept taking screenshots, kept documenting everything, building a case against my father like I was a detective gathering evidence of a crime, because it felt like a crime. Maybe not legally, though I suspected some of what he had done might actually be illegal, like tax fraud or something related to his finances. But morally, ethically, humanly, what he had done was absolutely a crime. He had stolen my childhood. He had stolen my mother's life. He had stolen 23 years from us based on lies. I looked at the clock. It was almost 1 a.m. My mother would still be awake. She was probably just getting home from her evening waitressing shift, exhausted and sore and ready to collapse into bed before she had to wake up in 5 hours to start her morning cleaning job. But she needed to know. She needed to know right now, tonight, immediately, before another day passed where she believed my father's lies. Before she worked another shift thinking she had to. Before she sacrificed another day of her life for a man who had been lying to her for 23 years. I called her. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone twice before I managed to hit the call button. It rang twice before she answered, her voice tired and worn down by another long day. "Jordan, is everything okay? It is really late." I did not know how to answer that question. Was everything okay? No, nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. Everything I thought I knew was a lie, and I was about to tell my mother that her entire adult life had been built on deception and manipulation, and nothing about that was okay. "Mom, I need you to sit down. I need to tell you something about Dad. Something really big." There was a pause. I could hear her moving, heard the creak of our old couch as she sat down. I could hear the television in the background. She always turned it on when she got home, said the noise helped her feel less alone. I could hear traffic from the street below our apartment. Normal sounds. Everything sounded normal. But nothing would ever be normal again after this conversation. What did he do? Not what about him? Or is he okay? But what did he do? Like on some level, maybe she had always known that something was not right. Maybe she had sensed it, felt it, intuited it, but had been too tired or too overwhelmed or too afraid to really look at it directly. Or maybe after 23 years of barely seeing him, of watching him come and go with weak excuses and minimal money, she had just accepted that he was not a good partner, but had felt trapped by circumstances and exhaustion and the sheer overwhelming difficulty of raising a child alone in poverty. "Mom, does Dad have a Facebook account?" "I do not think so. He always said he did not believe in social media." Said it was a waste of time and an invasion of privacy. Why are you asking? Of course that was what he said. Of course he had convinced her that he did not use social media, because social media is where his two lives might collide, where his two families might discover each other, where people might ask questions he did not want to answer. He had to keep them separate, keep the worlds from overlapping, maintain the barriers between his lies. Because I just found one, under the name Robert Hayes instead of Robert Johnson. And Mom, I had to pause, had to take a breath, had to force myself to say the words out loud, because once I said them, they would be real and there would be no going back. Mom, he has another family, another wife. Her name is Jennifer Hayes. They have been married for 21 years. They have 3 kids together. 3 kids, Mom. Sophia is 18. Ethan is 16. Olivia is 13. They live in Westwood in a huge house. They take expensive vacations. The kids go to private schools. They have new cars and nice clothes and everything we never had. Everything he told us we could not afford because we were too poor. They have all of it. Mom, I think he has been lying to us my entire life. Silence. Long, horrible, devastating silence that stretched on and on. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, fast and shallow and uneven, like she was trying not to hyperventilate, like her body was trying to process what her mind could not yet accept. I could hear the television still playing in the background, some late-night talk show host making jokes to a studio audience. I could hear my mother starting to cry. Quiet at first, just shaky breaths, and then louder, gasping sobs that sounded like they were being torn from somewhere deep inside her. Mom, are you okay? I know this is... Are you absolutely sure? Her voice was thick with tears, but also with something else. Desperate hope, maybe. The hope that I was wrong, that this was all some terrible mistake, that her life was not actually the lie it appeared to be. Are you completely certain it is him? I am looking at pictures of him right now. Same face, same scar over his eye from that car accident, same crooked nose. It is definitely him, Mom. I am looking at photos of him with his other wife at their wedding 21 years ago. Photos of him with their kids at graduations and birthday parties and vacations. Photos of him in front of a mansion in Westwood. Photos of family dinners and holidays and all these moments we never had. It is all real. All of it. More silence. Then, in a voice so broken it barely sounded like her. Send them to me. Send me the photos. I need to see. Mom, are you sure? Maybe you should wait until... Send them. Now. All of them. I need to see what my life has been. So I did. I sent her file after file, screenshot after screenshot, the entire catalog of my father's other life laid bare. His wedding photos showing him marrying Jennifer Hayes 2 years before I was born. Family photos showing them with their 3 children at various ages. Vacation photos from Hawaii, Europe, the Caribbean, all the places we could never afford to go. Photos of their huge house with the 3-car garage. Photos of expensive cars. Photos of the kids at private school events. Photos of birthday parties and holidays and graduations. Every moment of happiness and comfort and normalcy that he had given them while denying it to us. I stayed on the phone with her while she looked at them. I could hear her crying as she scrolled through, could hear her occasionally gasping or making sounds of pain that had no words. It took her almost an hour to go through everything, because there was so much, because the evidence of his double life was so extensive, because every photo required time to absorb and process, and try to reconcile with the man she thought she knew. He is married, she said finally, her voice hollow. He has been married this whole time, which means I am not his wife. I was never his wife. I am his mistress. For 23 years, I have been the other woman, and I did not even know it. Mom, you did not know. He lied to you. This is not your fault. But I should have known, she said, and I could hear the self-blame already creeping into her voice. I should have questioned things, like why he never wanted me to meet his co-workers, why he could never give me emergency contact information when he was supposedly on the road, why we could never have joint bank accounts, why I never saw his tax returns, why he always paid in cash and never had pay stubs. There were so many signs, and I just accepted his excuses because I was too tired to fight, too overwhelmed to question, too focused on surviving to really look at what was happening. He was deliberately deceptive. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had been practicing this lie for years before he even met you. You cannot blame yourself for not seeing through something he spent decades perfecting. 23 years, she said, and her voice broke on the words. I gave him 23 years of my life. Since I was 22 years old. I was young and stupid and in love, and he told me he loved me too, told me he wanted to build a life together. I got pregnant with you, and he said he was happy, said we would be a family, and I believed him. I believed every word. I worked 3 jobs to support us because he said money was tight, said the trucking industry was having a hard time, said he was doing his best, but it was not enough. I sacrificed everything. My education, my career dreams, my relationship with my parents who told me he was bad news. I gave up my entire life for him. And the whole time he had another family. A better family. A family he actually cared about. Mom, do you know what kills me? She was not crying anymore. Her voice had gone flat, cold, almost emotionless. It is not even the money, though that is terrible enough. It is that he had enough love for them, but not for us. He showed up for their events, but never for yours. He posted about being proud of his daughter Sophia, but he was not even there when you graduated high school. He took them on vacations, but told us we were too poor to go anywhere. He chose to be a father to them. He chose not to be a father to you. That is what I cannot forgive. Not the money, the love, the presence, the choice. I did not know what to say. She was right. The financial betrayal was devastating, but the emotional abandonment was somehow worse. He had demonstrated, through years and years of choices, that I was not worth being a father to, that they deserved his time and attention and love, and I did not. What are you going to do? I asked after a long moment. I do not know. She sounded lost, untethered, like her entire understanding of reality had just been shattered. I do not even know where to start. Do I confront him? Do I call a lawyer? Do I just disappear from his life the way he has been emotionally disappeared from mine for years? I have no idea. All I know is that I have been living a lie for 23 years, and I do not know who I am if none of this was real. You are still you, Mom. He does not get to take that away. You are strong and hardworking, and you have kept us alive through impossible circumstances. That is real. What we have together is real. He lied, but that does not make everything a lie. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, where do they live? This other family. I checked the location tags again. Westwood. The expensive part. Near Westwood Country Club. The address is on some of the photos. 1247 Maple Ridge Drive. An hour away, she said, and I could hear something changing in her voice. Not sadness anymore. Anger. Cold, focused anger. He has been living an hour away this whole time. All those times, he said, he was on long-haul trucking jobs. He was probably just there. With them. In his mansion. Living his real life. I could have driven past him on the street and not even known. We were that close, and he kept us completely separate. He is very good at lying. 23 years of practice, she said bitterly. You get good at anything if you do it long enough. Jordan, I need to see them. I need to see this house, this family, these people who have been living the life that should have been mine. Mom, I do not think that is a good idea. Maybe we should. I am not asking for permission, she interrupted. I am telling you what I am going to do. I am going to drive to that address in Westwood, and I am going to see for myself. I am going to look at this house that my suffering paid for, because every dollar he spent on them is a dollar he did not spend on us. My 3 jobs paid for their vacations. Your 60-hour work weeks paid for their private school tuition. We have been funding their luxury lifestyle while barely surviving ourselves. I deserve to see it with my own eyes. Okay. When? Now. Tonight. I am getting in my car right now and driving to Westwood. Mom, it is 1 a.m. Maybe you should wait until... I have waited 23 years, she said. I am done waiting. And she hung up, just like that. I tried calling her back, but she did not answer. I tried texting her, but got no response. She was going to Westwood in the middle of the night to see my father's other house and other family, and I could not stop her. I could not let her go alone. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car, my beat-up Honda, with its broken air conditioning and scratched paint and check engine light that had been on for 3 months. I drove to my mother's apartment as fast as I could, but by the time I got there, her car was already gone. She had maybe a 10-minute head start on me. I knew where she was going. 1247 Maple Ridge Drive, Westwood. I plugged the address into my phone and started driving, following the GPS through nighttime streets, heading toward the wealthy suburb where my father's other family lived. The drive took 43 minutes. 43 minutes through darkened streets, past neighborhoods that gradually got nicer and nicer. I watched the houses get bigger, the lawns get more manicured, the cars in driveways get more expensive. By the time I reached Westwood, I was in a completely different world from the one I lived in. This was where people with money lived. Real money. The kind of money that meant you never had to worry about rent or food or heat or any of the things that define my entire existence. Maple Ridge Drive was in the nicest part of Westwood. The houses were enormous, set back from the street on large lots, with professional landscaping and security systems, and that indefinable quality of wealth that comes from never having to think about money. I drove slowly down the street, looking at house numbers, and then I saw it. 1247, my father's house. His other house. His real house. It was even more impressive in person than in the photos. 2 stories, easily 5,000 square feet, maybe more. Brick facade, multiple chimneys, a 3-car garage with doors that probably cost more than my car. The lawn was perfect, like something out of a magazine. There were expensive bushes and trees and a flagstone path leading to the front door. Lights were on inside despite the late hour, warm yellow light spilling from windows that were probably floor to ceiling. And parked on the street in front of the house, engine still running, was my mother's car. A beat-up Corolla that looked absurdly out of place in this neighborhood of BMWs and Mercedes and Teslas. I pulled up behind her and turned off my engine. She was still sitting in her car, just staring at the house. I got out and walked over to her window, tapped on it gently. She looked at me like she had forgotten I existed, like she was so focused on the house that nothing else registered. Then she unlocked her door and I opened it. "Mom, are you okay?" "Look at it," she said, her voice flat. "Just look at it. That is where they live. That is what he bought with money that should have been ours. While we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with broken heat, they lived here. While I worked 3 jobs, Jennifer stayed home in that house. While you wore second-hand clothes, their kids had everything." "I know, Mom. I know. I want to go knock on the door. I want to see his face when he realizes we found out. I want to meet Jennifer and tell her that her perfect husband has another family. I want to destroy their perfect life, the way mine was just destroyed." "We can do that," I said, "but maybe not in the middle of the night. Maybe we should think this through. Make a plan. I am done thinking, she said, and she got out of the car. Before I could stop her, before I could talk her out of it, she was walking up that flagstone path toward the front door of the house. I ran after her, caught up with her just as she was raising her hand to ring the doorbell. Mom, please, let us think about this. You are emotional right now. You are in shock. I have every right to be emotional, she said, and I am ringing this doorbell. I am going to meet the woman who has been living my life, and you can either stand here with me or go back to the car, but I am doing this. And she rang the doorbell. We stood there on the porch, my mother in her waitressing uniform that smelled like French fries and exhaustion, me in my quick burger shirt and jeans that had not been washed in a week because I did not have time to do laundry. Two people who looked like exactly what we were, poor, tired, out of place in this wealthy neighborhood, waiting for someone to answer the door and for our father's perfect life to come crashing down. It took maybe 30 seconds, but felt like an eternity. Then the door opened, and there stood Jennifer Hayes. She was wearing what looked like expensive pajamas, her hair pulled back, no makeup, but still managing to look put together in a way my mother never did, because my mother was always too tired to care about appearances. Jennifer looked confused to find strangers on her doorstep at 1:30 in the morning. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but wary. My mother looked at her for a long moment. Then she said very calmly, "My name is Rebecca Johnson. This is my son, Jordan. We are here because your husband has been lying to you for 21 years. Jennifer's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "I am sorry, what? I do not understand. Do you have the wrong house? Is your husband Robert Hayes?" "Yes, but I do not see what." "His real name is Robert Johnson," my mother said, "and he has another family, me and Jordan. We have been together for 23 years. I thought he was my husband, but I guess he was already married to you. I guess that makes me the other woman, except I did not know there was another woman. I did not know about you or your kids or this house or any of it until my son found his Facebook profile tonight." Jennifer stared at us like we were speaking another language. "That is impossible. Robert does not have another family. He is a financial consultant. He travels for work, but he is not. He would not." "Would not what?" my mother asked. "Would not lie. Would not maintain a double life. Would not have another son he has been neglecting while showering your children with everything? Because I have photos that say otherwise. Years and years of photos showing him with you and your kids living in luxury while we struggled in poverty." "This is insane," Jennifer said, but her voice wavered. "This has to be some kind of mistake or confusion or—" "Is Robert home?" I asked, because this will be easier if we can all talk together. "He is not. He is traveling for work. He is in Seattle on a business trip. He will be back next week." "No, he is not," my mother said. "He is never traveling for work. He tells you he is traveling for work so he can go be with us, and he tells us he is on long-haul trucking runs so he can come be with you. That is how he has been maintaining this for 20 years. Lies to both families about where he is and what he is doing." "I do not believe you," Jennifer said, but she did not close the door. "This is crazy. Robert has been my husband for 21 years. I know him. He could not possibly." "Mom, what is going on?" A teenage girl appeared behind Jennifer. "Sophia!" I recognized from the photos. She was wearing pajamas, her hair messy from sleep, looking confused and concerned. "Go back to bed, honey," Jennifer said quickly. "This is just a misunderstanding." "It is not a misunderstanding," I said, looking at Sophia. "My name is Jordan Johnson. I am 19 years old. Robert Johnson, who you know as Robert Hayes, is my father. Has been my whole life. My mother and I live in the South Side in a 2-bedroom apartment that cost $650 a month. We have been struggling in poverty for my entire life while you lived here, while your mother stayed home. My mother worked 3 jobs. While you went to private school, I worked 60 hours a week just to eat. While your father showed up to your graduation and posted about being proud of you, he did not even show up to mine. We are your father's other family, the one he kept secret, the one he lied about, the one he chose not to invest in. Sophia stared at me, her face going pale. That is not possible. Dad does not have another son. We would know. He would have told us. Why would he tell you? My mother asked. That would ruin everything. His perfect life, his perfect family, his perfect image. We are the secret he has been keeping. The shameful other family he had to maintain, but did not want to acknowledge. I need you to leave, Jennifer said, but there was no force behind it. I need you to leave my property right now, or I am calling the police. Call them, my mother said. Please, call the police. I would love to have an official record of this. I would love for there to be documentation that I came to this address and told you that your husband has been lying to you for 21 years. Call them. I will wait. Jennifer's hand went to her phone, but she did not dial. She just stood there, looking at us, looking at her daughter, trying to process what was happening. You do not believe us, I said. I understand. It sounds insane, so let me show you proof. I pulled out my phone and opened my photos, the screenshots I had taken. This is your husband's Facebook profile, Robert Hayes, and these are photos of my mother and me. We are in his phone as contacts. We have years of text message history. We have photos of him with us from when I was a baby. We have everything. We can prove this is real. I held out my phone. Jennifer took it, reluctantly, and started scrolling through the screenshots. Her face went from disbelief to shock to something that looked like grief. Sophia looked over her shoulder, and I watched her expression change as she realized this was not some crazy misunderstanding. This was real. Oh my God, Sophia whispered. Oh my God, Mom, that is Dad. That is definitely Dad in these photos. Jennifer kept scrolling, kept looking at photo after photo of proof. Her hands were shaking. Tears were starting to form in her eyes. She looked up at us finally and said, How long? 23 years, my mother said, since I was 22 and stupid and believed him when he said he loved me. But that means when we got married, when I was pregnant with Sophia, he was already with my mother. I finished. Already starting another family. Yes. I do not understand, Jennifer said, and she sounded completely lost. Why would he do this? Why would anyone do this? Maintain 2 families for 20 years? How is that even possible? Money, my mother said flatly, and control, and because he could, because he was good at lying and no one questioned him. But we have joint finances. We file taxes together. I would have seen. There would have been evidence. Did you really look? My mother asked. Or did you trust him? Because I trusted him too, and he took advantage of that trust for 23 years. We stood there on that porch for another hour. Eventually Jennifer invited us inside, not because she wanted to, but because the neighbors were starting to notice the scene, and she did not want to make it more public. We sat in her enormous living room with its high ceilings and expensive furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows, and we compared stories. What he had told her, what he had told us, the pieces of his elaborate lie. He told her he was a financial consultant who traveled frequently for client meetings. He told us he was a long-haul truck driver. He told her he was gone maybe 1 week a month. He told us he was gone 3 weeks a month. The timing worked, because when he said he was traveling for work to her, he was actually with us. And when he said he was on long-haul routes to us, he was actually with her. He had carefully orchestrated his schedule to maintain both families without them overlapping. The money made sense now, too. He was making over $200,000 a year as an actual financial consultant. He was giving maybe 75% of that income to Jennifer and her household. He was giving maybe 10% to my mother and me, just enough to keep us afloat, but nowhere near enough to be comfortable. And he was keeping the remaining 15% for himself, hiding it in accounts neither family knew about. "I want a divorce," Jennifer said finally. It was almost 3 a.m. Her other 2 kids had woken up and heard enough to understand their father had another family. Ethan looked angry. Olivia looked confused and scared. "I want a divorce, and I want every penny he has. And I want child support. And I want—" She stopped, looked at my mother. "You should sue him too, for child support. For all the years he did not support Jordan the way he should have." "I do not know if I can," my mother said. "We were never legally married. I do not know what rights I have." "Then we get you a lawyer," Jennifer said. "A good one. My lawyer. She will figure it out. Because what he did, this is not just lying. This is financial abuse. This is neglect. This is— I do not even have words for what this is. But he is going to pay for it. Both of us are going to make sure he pays for it." That night changed everything. By the time we left Jennifer's house, as the sun was coming up, we had exchanged phone numbers. We had agreed to work together to hold my father accountable. We had started planning how to confront him and how to proceed legally and how to tell the truth to everyone in both families. The confrontation happened 2 days later when my father came back from his supposed business trip to Seattle. Jennifer had texted him to come home immediately, that there was a family emergency. He showed up at his Westwood house and found both his families waiting for him, me and my mother, Jennifer and her 3 kids, all 8 of us in the same room, staring at the man who had lied to all of us for 20 years. I will never forget the look on his face when he walked into that living room and saw us all there. Pure shock, then fear, then something that looked like defeat. He knew immediately that his double life was over, that the truth was out, that everything he had built was about to come crashing down. He tried to explain, tried to say he had meant to tell everyone, but never found the right time, tried to claim he loved both families, tried to make excuses, but there was no explanation that made any sense. No justification that held up under scrutiny. He had made a choice, over and over for 20 years, to lie and deceive and maintain this impossible situation. And now everyone knew. The legal fallout was extensive and complicated. Jennifer filed for divorce and took him for everything. The house, most of the assets, alimony, child support for Ethan and Olivia, who were still minors. My mother sued for back child support for all 19 years of my life, and the court agreed that even though they had never been legally married, he had financial responsibility for me. He ended up owing hundreds of thousands of dollars. The hidden offshore accounts were discovered during the divorce proceedings. My father had been squirreling away money for years, preparing for the possibility that his double life would be revealed. When those accounts were split between both families as part of the settlements, my mother ended up with enough money to quit all but one of her jobs, to move to a nicer apartment, to start building a life that was not just about survival. As for me, the court-ordered child support meant I could finally cut back my work hours and focus on school. I transferred to a 4-year university the next year. I am studying now to become a financial counselor, helping other families navigate complicated money situations. I want to use what I learned from my father's deception to help people avoid similar situations. My relationship with my half-siblings is complicated. Sophia and I talk occasionally. She feels guilty about the disparity in our childhoods, even though none of it was her fault. Ethan wants nothing to do with me. He sees me as the person who destroyed his family, even though I was just revealing a destruction that already existed. Olivia is still too young for me to have much of a relationship with, but maybe someday. Jennifer and my mother have a strange friendship now, bonded by their shared experience of being lied to by the same man. They meet for coffee sometimes, comparing notes on the red flags they missed, supporting each other through the ongoing legal proceedings, helping each other rebuild their lives after 2 decades of deception. My father ended up alone, both families done with him. Sophia sees him occasionally out of obligation. The rest of us have no contact. He is living in a small apartment now, experiencing for the first time what it is like to actually struggle financially after years of living in luxury. I have no sympathy for him. People sometimes ask if I regret how I handled it, if I wish I had kept the secret, protected his other family from the pain of the truth, found some quieter way to deal with it. And the answer is always no. They deserve to know. My mother deserved to know. Everyone deserved to know what he really was. The truth destroyed 2 families in one night. But those families were already destroyed. They were built on lies and maintained through deception. All I did was make the destruction visible. And sometimes that is necessary. Sometimes the only way to heal is to first acknowledge how broken things really are. My name is Jordan Hayes. I am 20 years old now. A year ago, I found my father's Facebook profile and discovered he had been living a double life for my entire existence. I showed up at his other family's house in the middle of the night, and I told them the truth, and it changed everything. Thank you for listening to my story of growing up faster than I ever wanted to. I have left 2 more stories on your screen, both from young men who learned that sometimes becoming an adult does not happen at 18. It happens the moment your family needs you to be strong. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be forced to grow up overnight, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, age is just a number, but courage defines who you really are.